Okay, this could be problematic. Let's just chuck that in there, shall we? Better. Hi, I'm Shelley and welcome to a Halloween themed October wrap-up. Look, I even have a tail. Woohoo! Who knows who I am right now? I'll give you a clue. I have a tail, I have wings, flap flap, and I usually have a little dragonfly just about here. Do you know? Do you know? If you do, I love you and you're brilliant. I will send you a metaphoric cookie. So it's Halloween, the end of October, which means it's wrap-up time. I read 7 books this month. Still not sure how that happens. It surprises me every time. Let's jump in with the first one I read. A little e-novella by J. Lynn. It was called The Proposal. 2.5, I think is what they're calling it, of the Wait For You series that she did between Cam and Avery. And this one is, well, you can guess, A Proposal. She actually did it over Twitter. She wrote the little novella and just sent it up through tweets, and then they put it all together. I will try and find the link to it so you can read it down below if you're interested. I love that story. I think there's one more in the series for me to read now of kind of extended friends and extended families, but I love the little Wait For You kind of family series thing. Jaylyn, of course, is Jennifer Almentrout, the writer of the Lux series as well. Second book I read this month was my book of the month. It is my jam, I love it, and that is the Bookshop Book by Jen Campbell, the Books of My Bag Book of the Year 2014. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. I wrote a review of it, so I'll put a link down to that below if you want to find out more of my thoughts. But it's so lovely. It is filled with stories from bookshops, over 300 bookshops around the world. It just tells you the stories of how these bookshops came to be, how they've survived through terrible, horrible times and brilliant times, the little random things that come out of it, such as a woman who lived in Canada who really, really wanted to work in a bookshop in Scotland. He emailed a guy who is a bit like Bernard from Black Books, said, I come work for you for practically nothing. And so she went over to work with him and then she married him. How cute is that? It's full of little facts and interviews with famous writers and publishers and Hank Green, Ian Rankin, two of the people off the top of my head I can think of. As did you know that part of the M6 toll road is made up of mushed Mills and Boons copies? I will never drive on the M6 toll road again without then picturing Mills and Boons covers. It's brilliant. Also, if Hitler had invaded England and taken over, his base of his empire was going to be Oxford, and that's why he didn't bomb it. That's slightly creepy, but interesting. I found things out. This was sent to me by Constable, and I have the kind of press release printout that came with it. And I seriously have written down on the back of it all the books I have to read because of this book, and now all the places I have to visit because of this book. There's so many beautiful bookshops I now have to go to. Jen herself, the author, has just started her new Booktube channel. She did a book haul a couple of days ago. I'll link her down below and her video because it's brilliant. She's fantastic. Also, she's on tour at the moment, so if you want to get a copy of this signed, or you want to meet her and talk to her, I'll put a link down to her tour below. The next 2 I read were part of a series, the Lunar Chronicles. I read Scarlet and Cress by Marissa Meyer. I don't have them here because I got them from the library. These are futuristic retellings of fairy tales. So the first one in the series was Cinder, and that was a retelling of Cinderella. Second and third I read this month were Scarlet and Cress, which is a retelling of Little Red Riding Hood and Rapunzel. Let's start with Scarlet. I really liked it. I think I gave it like 3 or 4 out of stars on Goodreads. It was fast moving. You still have Cinder in there as well, which was really interesting. They don't just drop a character and move on to the next. They kind of just pick up a new fairy tale while carrying on with the old one. But you have the basic Little Red Riding Hood story, a young girl whose grandmother goes missing. She tries to find her, but while finding her she gets into the company of a guy named Wolf. And mischief happens while Cinder is still in trouble and trying to get herself out of mischief at the same time. I really liked it. I wanted to know what happened, so I moved straight on to Cress, and there's always one in a series, isn't there? There's always one book in a series that just kind of slows down a little. I found Cress really quite annoying. A lot happened, but it happened in a very short time space, and then a lot of nothing happened. I thought I was going to get it through in a couple of days, and it took me like a week and a half. I really just got so fed up with it at times. I loved the story, just it was too slow for me. I think the next one in the series is going to be called Winter, which is kind of like Snow White. Each time, as I said, you just pick up another fairy tale princess and carry on with the rest of them. Next, I read The Geography of You and Me by Jennifer E. Smith. Again, I don't have a copy here because I borrowed it off a friend and gave it back to them. The story of a young boy and girl who get stuck in a lift in New York and there is a blackout. They don't know each other, they come from completely different backgrounds and economic situations, and they're just kind of stuck together, and it's how they make it through this blackout. They form this friendship, relationship thing, but then they have to separate. So they write each other postcards from different points in the world, and it's all about how they learn things about each other and about themselves as they separate, come back together, separate, come back together. It felt a bit like a road trip book. They were travelling around and learning about each other and themselves, and it was really cool. I liked it. Next up, I picked up Little Women by Louisa M. Alcott. It's about 4 young women in about the time of the Civil War in America. They live in Massachusetts. The dad is off fighting in the war, and they have fallen on not really, really hard times. They're not completely destitute, but they're not living the life of luxury, put it that way. They have to make certain cutbacks, and they don't have Christmas presents and things like that. There are 4 sisters: Meg, Jo, Beth, and Amy, that's the last one. All in different ages, and it's about how they grow up. They each take their separate path. It's cozy. This book is so cozy. I'm really glad I read it at this time, because it's an autumny, Christmassy, winter kind of book. I have watched the movie before I read the book. I grew up watching that movie. Christian Bale may be Batman to everybody else, but to me, he's Laurie, which is the next door neighbour boy in this book. This makes me feel so happy and gives me the warm fuzzies. Next up, I read one of the many books I want to read because of the Bookshop Book, and that is The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie by Muriel Spark. I think it's the 1940s, 1950s time, and it is about how she is a teacher and she is in her prime. She's Scottish, by the way, in case you didn't know by my very bad accent. And she teaches these girls to be a little different. She doesn't exactly teach them what's on the syllabus, shall we put it that way. And it's told in the narratives of the girls she teaches, and she calls them Brodie set. There are 6 or 7 of them, I think. I got a bit confused as to how many of them there were. I think this book has a lot of undertones of feminism and politics that I went over my head, I have to admit. I listened to it as an audiobook, and I was literally taking it in as the story only and not all the things that are underneath. I have no idea what that bang was. I kind of want to re-listen to it at some point to take on everything else. If you just want to read something funny and a nice story, it is also that. Last but not least, I read 1+1 by Jojo Moyes. I got this off the library, so again, I don't have anything to show you. It's about a single mother who is struggling to get by. She has a daughter who is very, very, very good at maths. And she wants to go to the kind of big corporate school, and they've got a scholarship, but they're not quite enough to cover everything, and so they're trying to get to a maths Olympiad so they can win the prize and have the following money to get her into this posh school. I found the daughter's chapters really kind of sweet. It's different to hear the narrative of, I think she's about 11 or 12, and it was quite interesting. A little thing I did notice, oddly, was that the actress who was playing her in the audiobook was then in Doctor Who the next week. So I was just like, oh, that's what she looks like then. Interesting. But anyway, I'm rambling. I liked this book, but it could have ended about 3 times. She just got to an ending and carried on, got to an ending and carried on, and to me it was just a bit too long. I enjoyed the chapters, I enjoyed the narrative, but yeah, I think me and Jojo Moyes are just breaking up a little bit. I'm also currently reading Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban because, you know, it's Halloween, it has to be done, so I probably would have finished that by the time this goes out. I'd love to know what you thought of any of these books, if you have read them or you're going to read them, or what you've read this month or are reading it currently. Just come talk to me in the comments about anything, and especially if you want to talk about this dude, because yeah, I'm a 90s kid. Okay, I hope you guys are good. Bye! One of my horns is kind of smushy. I got a smush in my... hang on. Smush. I have a limp horn. Yes, I did just say it.